Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 102. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week out there. Life is starting to return to a little bit more normalcy. At least it is over here in the fine bluegrass state. Some things are starting to reopen. This is just such a confusing time. You don't know who to listen to, what's going on, what's right. It's my sincere wish for each and every one of you that you're staying safe, staying healthy, and hopefully we can all get back to a full normal life and schedule here real soon. We have a fantastic interview for you today. One of my all-time favorite drummers, one of the biggest influences ever in my life. I'm going to be joined by the great Troy Luccketta right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks.
The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks.
All right, guys and girls, as I mentioned, we're going to be joined by Troy Luccketta of Tesla here in just a moment. I just have to say, when I was a young drummer, Tesla was really coming into their own. When I was a youngster, one of the first records that I ever bought with my own money was The Great Radio Controversy. That is a absolutely true story. And that record, which was their second record, is one of my 10 Desert Island records. If I were forced to go into exile, that is absolutely one of the albums that I would take with me. It is a masterpiece from start to finish. I was such a Tesla fan that when the studio that they recorded their first few albums at up in New York, called Bearsville Studio, when they closed down, I actually tried to bid on some of the equipment that they were auctioning off, just so I could have a piece of equipment that Tesla recorded with. Huge Tesla fan. And Troy Luccketta has certainly been just a huge influence on me in my life. And let's not forget that these guys practically invented MTV Unplugged. That became all the rage after they released 5-Man Acoustical Jam. This band has just been hugely influential on countless musicians. Their music is just fantastic, and a lot of that is credit to Troy Lucketta's magical and musical drumming. Just a superhuman being. He's always one of the first guys to offer his time for charitable causes. We talked to him a little bit about Troy Shows Up, where he's working with kids in schools and, talking about how, his personal journey has shaped him into the man that he is. So without further ado, I want to get to the interview, but this one was very, very special to me. They say don't ever meet your heroes. I can tell you that is certainly not true in this case. It was just such an honor for me to have him on the Drum Shuffle. Help me welcome Troy Luccketta. Good morning, Troy. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Jamie?
Man, I can't complain at all. Firstly, let me just say, I am going to go total fanboy mode here for just a second. Thank you so much for being on the Drum Shuffle. We all have our Mount Rushmore of drummers, and you are one of my 4 guys that I would put on the Mount Rushmore of influences to me. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's huge, man. That's a big deal, and thank you.
Oh,
That's very kind. Very kind.
No. It's very sincere. I would have to say, you, Tommy Lee, Rod Morgenstein, the great Rod Morgenstein, and John Bonham are the 4 guys that I point to that made me the drummer I am. So it comes from a very sincere place. So thanks so much for doing this. I've been waiting on this one a long time.
Oh, good, man. Well, again, that you hold me in high regards, and I appreciate that. I don't take it lightly.
Well, I appreciate you saying so. Troy, I know there's a lot of information out there on your early years, but just for my listeners, if you'll indulge me, you were born and I guess grew up in the Bay Area. Lodi, I think specifically is where you were born. Talk to me about your early years and how you got into drumming originally.
Well, great question. Yeah, I was born in Lodi, and I lived in Dublin, California, which was probably an hour from Lodi, which is the Bay Area, and Northern California. So, I was probably, I don't know, in, about 10 on when I started getting interested in drums, and my mom had records. I used to listen to her records, and, I had a little cassette player I remember walking down the street with and playing these cassettes, and I didn't have any drums. A buddy of mine had come over to the house and asked me to come up to his place, and they had a snare drum in the garage, and the short story is he basically was myself and I think there was 3 of us in the garage, and we just stood around the snare drum and looked at it, and they handed me a pair of spoons, and they go, well, kind of like, well, go ahead, play it. And I remember, because they knew I wanted to play drums, and when I think about this story, it's so amazing to me to think about what had happened next, because I remember just being that age, and I grabbed those spoons and I played Wipeout,
That's awesome.
and I remember their face lit up like a Christmas tree, and so did mine, just like, wow, that worked, kind of thing. And just because I could hear it and play it,
Yeah.
Not a big deal, but kind of a big deal, I guess it was huge when I think about it. But obviously Wipeout's Wipeout. But at any rate, so that led me to my paper routes, 3 of them, being the addict that I am, and I say that with 26 years of sobriety, by the way.
Yeah.
But being that guy, 1 paper route wasn't enough. So, let's get 3 and let's get some drums. And
Yeah.
I did buy my first set of drums on my own, $55, a set of Crest. It came with no hi-hat, but it had a snare, 1 rack, bass drum, and 1 cymbal mounted on the bass drum. And that was my drum kit. Later, I got a hi-hat, and I started playing the records, and that's how I got started.
That's so awesome. And, I mean, I've read, other interviews that you've done over the years. I know that Mitch Mitchell was a huge influence on you as a youngster. I know you've mentioned Bonham. You've mentioned Steve Gadd as an early influence. Were you, I guess, once you got started, once you bought your first kit, were you immediately, you said you started playing along with records, but did you take lessons, or were you immediately just, I'm going to learn how to do this and start forming bands? Which path did you take?
The path I took was the path of least resistance at that time for me, was just get on the drums and start hitting them, which I had no clue, no lessons. The first song I ever played was Proud Mary by Ike and Tina Turner.
Nice.
And I remember learning that song and playing it, my version, and my mom's friends would come over and she'd ask me to play for them. And I didn't want to play because I was kind of shy. Then I'd play, and then they couldn't get me off the drums. And it's like, can you get that kid to leave for a little while so we can visit, it was like after you got going, it's like that's all you wanted to do, and that was my story. But I started playing the records. My brother had records, my sister, my mom, and I didn't have any records. But, I started playing to Creedence Clearwater, and I started playing to Jimi Hendrix. I mean, Are You Experienced? I mean, that was a big one for me. Had Iron Man, with some of the Black Sabbath stuff. My brother had, sure, I was listening to Led Zeppelin and all that stuff, but, that stuff all kind of came, as a byproduct. And then over the years, I was 15 years old is when I really got in my first band, and I started playing with guys that were older than me, but, they were smoking a lot of pot and getting me high during, playing and like passing a joint around. And I'm like, this isn't good. So I ended up quitting. But, that was my introduction to just not to go down that road.
Right.
It's reality. It's what happened, and, but at any rate, I started playing in bands and getting in original bands and continued, listening to records and playing music. And it wasn't until my late teens where I met a guy named Steve Bellino, who was the brother of Keith Bellino, who was the bass player in this band that I played in. And I'd go to his house, and I'd always hear him practicing. And he always had, it seemed like he was a big Jeff Porcaro fan. So at that time, it wasn't Toto. It was actually Boss Skaggs.
Yeah.
A record called Silk Degrees, which, so I get with him, and he started taking me through Ted Reed's Syncopation and taught me how to do a double stroke roll. We got on practice pads, and that started my technique, so to speak, to where things started to change, because I was a basher and just played from the heart, which has served me well, by the way. And then moving forward over the years in bands, in and out of bands, and making records with Eric Martin Band was the first record I recorded, which was I was 23, and that's the singer for the band Mr. Big. And at any rate, that was before Tesla, and then the Tesla thing started up. But I'd always continue with education and find a balance between studying on my own or with guys, no school, no formal, training in that sense. But I've developed quite a bit of technique over the years, paying attention,
Yeah.
and being interested and trying to get, I'm not a huge reader, but I can read. But to put charts in front of me, you know what, today I think that's getting ready to change, because I'm ready to really dig in more on that issue with the reading and the writing thing. I've been very blessed to have accomplished some things without the reading, like recording with Keith Emerson with the full orchestra, and that was probably one of the highest achievements recording wise. And you have to have some experience to obviously jump in and do that.
Yeah.
And we recorded a lot of old ELP stuff. We went to Germany and recorded with 70-piece orchestra. And I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but point being, so I have some information is my point.
Right.
And some things that I have studied and learned over the years, but I am a self-taught player. So.
Yeah. And I think there's two different schools here. I mean, I'm a self-taught player as well, and the lessons that I've had in my life and my playing life is watching great players like you and and stealing fills and, all things like that, there are other guys, that they grew up, they got that formal education. And I say all this to say there's not one right way to be a great player. I mean, there's not one path that you have to take. And, you mentioned something there coming through your history that I think a lot of people, they maybe just kind of know the detail of it, the fact, and that's you were in the Eric Martin band prior to Tesla. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is, that project was on the verge of major success. I mean, you guys, toured with bands like Journey and and Foreigner and, huge bands of that time. So I guess lightning struck twice for you. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it actually is because, we were managed by Herbie Herbert, who managed Journey, and I was rehearsing in the Journey warehouse when I was 23, and I had my set of Gretches I recorded the first record with, and then Steve Smith had lent me one of his Sonar kits that I took on a couple other tracks that we ended up recording. And I developed a relationship, with him, which was huge at a young age. And, so I think when the band broke up when I was 23, I had just enough information and success but never made any money. And when the band broke up and Herbie took Eric solo, I mean, it was interesting. I couldn't have been happier at the time. I remember the band being a little disappointed in some of the people, and seeing the looks on their face. And I drove across the Bay Bridge coming home, and the band had just broke up, lost our record deal after the first, and I was super happy. And and I went to work, and I just knew that I wanted to be part of a band again, And when the Tesla thing came around, and Dwayne Hitchings was over Eddie Money's house in Oakland, and I lived in San Leandro, just down the road, 20 minutes, and he came over to the house and played me this demo of this band he was working with, which was City Kid, which is the same band, Tesla. And he had a demo, and I heard Jeff's voice, and, I thought, I'm going to check this out. And at the time, I guess he was at Eddie's house, and we were on the road, Eric Martin Band, with Eddie, and I guess Eddie had inquired about me because his drummer, Gary Ferguson, who became a friend of mine when we were on the road, was leaving, and there was an opportunity for me to take that other path. It was a salary, $750 a week. I knew what it was paying. And I just wanted to be in a band, man. And that was kind of a game changer for me, because I was like, man, I want to be in a band, I don't want to be a side guy. But it was flattering to know that there was some interest. And I didn't even believe in myself enough probably to think I could have gotten the gig, But people would see things inside of me that I didn't see in myself in terms of my confidence level. They see me as something. But, because I was looking at Gavin Porcaro and those guys, I couldn't see anything in myself because I knew who the real guys were, and I certainly wasn't one of those guys. But even Steve Smith, we were out on the road in Hawaii with Journey at the time on the Frontiers Tour. We were doing 5 nights at the Blaisdell Center, sold out, opening. And, he grabbed me one day and he took me out and he said, hey, man, I got a gig for you. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, a gig, man? God, I'm out here with Eric Martin Band. We got a record deal. What are you talking about? You got a gig for me? But he had just come off recording with Bryan Adams, and he had recorded Heaven, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And Frankie LaRocca was the drummer, and he wanted to call Bryan and tell Bryan that he had a drummer. And he believed I was the guy. And I thought that was huge that he saw me that way. And I didn't see myself that way. I declined on that offer. And it was just so sweet of Steve to think of me that way. I don't even know if he would remember it to this day, but that happened. And,
that's a huge vote of confidence. I mean, when somebody like Steve Smith is, is trying to fix you up, that's huge, man.
He sat behind me every night and would watch me play, and obviously watching him. So, any rate, thinking about that, it brings up a lot for me. But yeah, that was a crossroads, and that was again a game changer. I wanted to be in a band, and and I went that route, and it worked out for me. And I always felt like I was the missing link for those guys when I seen them. I knew we were going to do exactly what we did. I mean, that's the crazy part. When I joined them, I had a gut feeling. I was like, oh, we're doing this. This is happening. I knew who the bands that were happening, which was Motley, Quiet Riot, and all these 80s bands that were taking off. And I thought, well, we're going to do this. This is going to work.
Yeah.
And it did. And I say that humbly now. But there was a sense. It's interesting. Here I had those feelings about myself of inadequacy and not measuring up. But at the same time, I had enough confidence in what I was doing and the choice I was making, knowing I was the drummer for those guys.
Yeah. Well, and look, it goes without saying, the first, dare I say it, 4 Tesla records, the first one, Mechanical Resonance, is just pillar to post a great record. And, a lot of people, a lot of bands, their first record is fantastic because they've had their entire life to write those songs, and they've had years and years to perfect those songs. So when they go in the studio with, great producers like, in your guys' case, Barbiero and Thompson, a lot of times that first record is so good. Then the second record comes around, you've been on tour for a year, 15 months, whatever the case, and you've had to write that second record. A lot of bands suffer the sophomore slump. And dare I say it, the Great Radio Controversy, the second record that Tesla put out, is one of my desert island records. Like if I had to go live in solitude the rest of my life and I was allowed to take 10 CDs with me, the Great Radio Controversy would absolutely be one of them. It is just a masterpiece in my opinion. So you guys had something that the other bands didn't have, and I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but your all's substance was deeper than most of your contemporaries in the late 80s and early 90s, even with Psychotic Supper. You guys weren't just writing party songs and, hey, baby, let's go on a date and all that stupid crap. You guys had some substance about your songs. Is that just a personal reflection, or was that calculated?
No, I think it was just personal growth in what we were doing and who we were as a band, because we all had the same interests, and we knew we couldn't compete and with even, the hair bands and the stuff that didn't happen for us. We were just a blue collar band,
Yeah.
and Jeff was writing deep stuff, man. And, and the music, I don't know, man, it's kind of interesting looking back, at it, to think about what it is. And yeah, the legacy behind us is very cool. I'm very proud of it. And there was something happening that was, I remember, I think it was in Nikki Sixx. He was in an interview and he was talking about Tesla, something about those tomato farmer dudes from Sacramento, right? And it really sums it up, because, I mean, as much as everybody loves the band, and respects the band, I mean, that was huge. I mean, man, first album comes out, next thing I know, Tommy Lee's at my house. I'm like, I mean, obviously I didn't call him, and I don't know how that exactly happened when they came into town, maybe it was. And, I remember him coming over the house and thinking like, it was all because of what we were doing, and the interest people took in the band. And, I'm a huge Tommy Lee fan, I think Tommy's amazing.
Yeah.
So, for us, it just happened, man. Nothing was calculated at all, ever. It was never pretentious about anything we've ever done. And I think that's what's worked for us,
Yeah. I totally agree. And, this will probably blow some of our younger listeners' minds, but there was a time that if you wanted to go see a band and have good seats, you had to stand in line. The day tickets went on sale. There was no such thing as the internet, right? I mean, you went to the box office the day, Friday night. Tickets typically went on sale Saturday morning. You went Friday night, you camped out, you stood in line to get your tickets at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. And, I can honestly say there's only been 3 bands that I've ever done that for, and Tesla is one of them. And I ended up with really good seats to your all show. I think it was in September of 92. It was the Psychotic Supper tour. And I sat second row center stage for that show. I think Firehouse was your all's special guest on that tour. And I just want to say, of all the shows that I've been to in my life, that's still one of my favorites because it was just pure good rock and roll. I mean, you guys at that point, I think were hitting on just all cylinders. And it was pretty amazing to be that close and getting to see you play from that distance. It had a huge impact on me. I mean, I was still a teenager. I was a high school kid that was still trying to figure it all out. And that was a huge seminal moment for me as a drummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny. I remember that because that's when I got sober, early on. And, that was probably one of my favorite records too. Psychotic Supper. It was just, I thought we were coming into our own there, and the band was continuing, the growth of what was happening and maturing. You look at those records, Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, and you look at the early records, and you see the growth in the records, and you're not just making the same record over and over again. And we've always done that. But that was a good time and a good period. It was our first headlining tour because we did a co-headlining tour with Great White prior to that. So, good. Those were some strong memories for me as well. And I've never been one to, again, self-analyze myself and thinking I've never really been happy with a lot of my playing over the years, and I'd always see the shortcomings of everything where I was. And as I do today, I still work on a lot of stuff and play and do things, but, it's kept me motivated. I mean, since I've been up this morning, I did a 90-minute interview with somebody. I was on some stuff I was working on. I've already had 2 Pro Tools sessions opened and imported all my files from the band sent me last night that we're going to put together for some of this quarantine stuff, and I'll have them recorded today. But, I've been up since 5, which is perfectly normal for me. Go to bed at, 11 midnight. Been doing this pretty much most of my life. That's how I operate. I'm trying to figure things out. I've got my new studio built. I mean, I work, and love it. Still a student, still trying to figure it out. But I'm in a pretty good place today, with where I am. But it's a different day and age, and hopefully we can continue to keep this boat afloat and keep people interested and keep making good records and, keep the interest.
Yeah, well, and, I do want to touch on it at least briefly, the most recent, Tesla record, and you have other projects that you play with, Dixie Horsepower and things like that. But the last Tesla record, it's been out just over a year now, and it was called Shock, and it was produced by Phil Collin of Def Leppard. And that was a bit of a departure for Tesla. I thought it was a little different, but it was great. So you guys are continuing to evolve, and so I guess what I'm curious about is when you guys tour, I saw you all in October in Louisville, you came through. The fans, obviously, they want to hear the old hits, right? I mean, that's what they want to hear. Is that ever discouraging to you, knowing that you're putting out records like Shock that are different and off the beaten path? Does it ever discourage you guys?
No, because you always have a song or two you play. We always play the hits. We try to cater. We can't play them all, otherwise it would just be, the same set over and over and over again. So we try to reach in and mix it up and put some deeper tracks in and, figure that out. But you have to play the hits, we do.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't know. We've always felt that. And, with being on the road with Leppard, they have proved many things to us and we've learned a lot from them. With Phil being at the head of it, it was a different record. It wasn't a Tesla record. It was a Phil Collin Tesla record. And Phil produced, co-wrote, played, sang. He was the fifth Beatle on that record. So it was the record he wanted to make. And if we were to do that again today with him, which I'm sure we won't, because we've been there and done it, and there's no reason to do it again. I'm guessing. I could be wrong. Who knows? If we would ever do something. But if we went back in and did anything, it would be a lot different.
Yeah.
Because of what we learned from that and what, I think, we let him make the record he wanted to make. And I think if everybody could have been engaged a bit more and maybe kept it in more in the Tesla style, I think it would have probably served us better in certain areas. But at the same time, when we go play those songs live, it is Tesla. So,
sure.
But there's things lyrically that were, that wasn't Jeff, and Jeff would admit that and say that, but went with the program, songs like Taste Like, that wouldn't be something Jeff would normally write.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I had to ask the question.
It's good. No, it's perfect because there was some people that jumped right online and were not happy. You're going to have a handful of those guys. But like for me, it's no big deal. It's like, hey, I got no problem. I think it's a great record. There's a lot of great stuff on there.
Yes.
Is it a Tesla record? Not exactly a Tesla record, but it's fair to say it's a Tesla Phil Collin record.
Right.
Or a Phil Collin Tesla record.
Right.
With us, responding and working. And that's exactly what it was supposed to be. So for what it was, it's exactly what we wanted to do. We gave him complete control over the record to make the record he wanted to make. And what I love about the record, he did a fantastic, amazing job. I can't say enough amazing things about how he showed up. And that's the bottom line, and the commitment and the love for the band. So, and it's equal, and that's why there was equal respect. And that's why it has those overtones and, of him and Leppardish, how he records and what he's used to, which was fine,
Yeah.
It's fair. It's fair game. And then you come out and then, we go back in the studio, we go over to Abbey Road and, there's Tesla. And we know who we are as a band, and it's very clear, very simple. So that part of it was easy for me, maybe not quite as easy for some of the fans that want to jump back in and go, hey, what happened?
Well, you're always gonna have that, after, I had concerns after Bearsville Studio ceased operation. I was like, oh my God, what's Tesla going to do now? You know what I mean? It's just silly things that fans think about.
And then you think about after Bustanet, coming back on the scene, we had Into the Now, which was a complete Tesla record, which I really think that's a great record.
It is.
And it was very perfect for the times and just enough modern, and it was still us. And we found that, we rode that fine line, and it worked. I thought that was perfect. And it was self-produced for the most part. It was us, doing what we do. And, who's to say where we'll go in the future, but, we'll stay true to what we do. And, hopefully we can get back out there and get through this stuff and get people back in playing some music, huh? Get back into doing some shows.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that can't come quick enough right now. It's pretty crazy. I want to switch gears just a little bit. Something that you've mentioned a couple of times here is your sobriety, and something that I don't share or talk about a lot on the show is the fact that, I stopped drinking 2.5 years ago. So I've got, 2.5 years of sobriety now. And I know that that's a big part of who you are. And you're doing all sorts of things, not necessarily sobriety related, but things that are beyond the realm of just Tesla or being a drummer. Like, for example, I want to talk about Troy Shows Up, and I want you to tell everybody what that's about, because you have always been one of the first guys in the music business to say, oh, you need something? I'm here. I'll do it. I think of the Station nightclub fire and how Tesla was the first band. You specifically were like, yep, we're there. We'll help you raise money. But talk to us a little bit about Troy Shows Up and just your attitude of always being willing to give back.
Well, it's an attitude of gratitude for sure. That's easy for me. I've been sober coming up on 27 years, the 4th of July, God willing, I make it. And I spent 90 minutes doing step work with somebody, so I am very active in sobriety in the 12-step community. That is my world I live in. And I was asked a year ago this last September, so we'll be coming up on 2 years this September, I was asked to speak at a high school, which turned into a middle school over in Derby, Kansas. And I was asked to speak about drugs and talk to the kids. So I said yes. Took on the Pepsi challenge, so to speak, 30 days prior to me having to go do my presentation. I was like, wow, what did I sign up for? And I got really focused on what I was going to do and very insecure at the same time. And I broke out, man, with my skin I was nervous, like, wow, man, what am I doing? Can I do this? And so anyway, I put the program together. I showed up and I documented it. My whole program is Show Up. And that's, you go to troylucketta.net, you'll see just Show Up. Well, that's my MO for life. And because of that, I showed up and documented it turned into troyshowsup.com, which is me speaking in high schools and middle schools now and having a program. And I'm still working behind the scenes. I got a lot going on with that. And that's how it came to be. I wasn't looking for this. I didn't set out to do it. It's kind of God's will for me and a purpose plan. It's a purpose-driven life for me, and that's what it's about. You can have everything, as I did in Psychotic Supper. Prior to me getting sober, we were headlining arenas actually with Great White, and it was after that tour and after a few things that happened that I ended up getting sober. And headlining arenas and having everything and having nothing was my bottom. And thank God, a buddy of mine gave me a questionnaire, am I an addict? And I took it, and I didn't know I had a problem. And then after looking at what addiction was and understanding it and realizing I had a problem, it became something I had to deal with. And I jumped in and checked myself into a 30-day inpatient program. I didn't tell nobody about it. I called our manager, Cliff Bernstein. I told him. Nobody knew about it. I snuck away. 9 days later, we're playing Tokyo Dome with Metallica on New Year's. I went in November 21st, got out December 21st, 91. Going in 91, 92, we're Tokyo Dome with Metallica, and it's New Year's, biggest party night of the year, and flew into Japan. I went to an English-speaking meeting. I went down and, did the gig, got out of the gig after my set, and I got out, and I just started my journey. And it was probably 2.5, 3 months later, I sat down and told the guys what was going on when we boarded the bus to actually start. I think it was Psychotic Supper Tour, was it? Yeah, that would have been the beginning of Psychotic Supper, 92. And I shared with the band what had taken place, and there was still a lot of partying going on,
Yeah.
And at any rate, I had to figure it out for myself and start my journey, and I did. And I couldn't be happier today, looking back to think like, my goodness, wow. I mean, that's a long time to be sober, looking back at it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've got 2.5 years, and I look back and think, gosh, that was years and years ago. I mean, it really wasn't, but it does seem like a long time ago when you're on that journey, as you say.
Well, it also seems like yesterday. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I love sobriety. I love my life. I love where I'm at. I'm sitting here in my home studio. I got my 2 dogs just hanging. My wife's in the other room. We're going to do a garden this week, and I'm going to probably record half a dozen songs. And, I'll record minimum of 2 today for the Tesla thing. I'll go down and I'll blow those out. That's stuff we played, so it won't be that big of a deal. You know how just throw a camera up, take a pass through, they'll take that stuff and they'll put it out in the quarantine video.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm like, okay, sure, no problem. You sent me the tracks last night. So, at any rate, it's an exciting place, man, exciting time, and I've taken the quarantine thing for me is just a huge blessing, having some time off, because we haven't had this kind of time off for 20 years. We went back and put it all together. We've been on the road working ever since. So to have this hit at this time, it's a blessing for me, and it's fast forwarded a lot of things and given me time to really reflect and think about the things that are important. And being on the road 24/7, it's like not something I really even care to do and stay in like we have. And maybe this will be a new conversation for us and the guys. Maybe everybody will feel like, hey, yeah, we want to tour. We'll go out and we'll do some stuff, but I don't want to stay on the road anymore like we have. I would like to do it differently, and maybe the other guys might want to do it differently as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out,
Well, and not to date anybody, but in our conversation that we had a couple of weeks back, and I don't think it had dawned on me, but you said, "Man, I'm 60 years old," and as such a fan, I guess I'm just always gonna, see Troy, you as that 25, 27-year-old guy that's, in his new band Tesla. It had never dawned on me. You are still in, immense physical condition. I mean, I just saw you guys in October and you haven't lost a single step. I mean, it's pretty amazing, really.
Thank you. I work hard at it. I really do. And I made a statement on a Facebook post a while back, and it was because of an interview I was doing like this. I made a comment on the interview. I said, when there's if there's a 22-year-old kid out there that could do my job better than me, then we got a problem. And I had posted it, and some people didn't respond to it the way I meant it,
Yeah.
It might have sounded arrogant. It wasn't. It was more about, if there's a 22-year-old kid that can kick my ass right now, then that tells me that I better get in there because I want to be the best guy for the job is my point.
Right.
That's all I really meant by it. But it got, I ended up having to take it down. And it's okay. It was a good lesson for me, because I don't normally, and I even tried to put up a video saying what I meant, but it didn't come across. It got lost in the shuffle when people were like, what, Tesla want to replace you with the 20, it went to all these different places. And one guy posted like, I could frickin' play circles around you. I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't mean any of that. And he's 50 something, right? And I don't have to be 20. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I just obviously got taken out of context. So, but the truth of the matter is yes, I want to be able to perform. I want to be in great shape. I work hard at it. I have to work hard at it. I don't work hard enough, to be honest with you. I should be working out and doing a lot more than I do. And I'm home. My wife's making bread now, so I'm like, well, that bread's so good. Let me eat another loaf of that. Not the best thing to do at my age. But it's good stuff, man. Yeah, the band's in fairly good shape, And I look at, Sammy Hagar and Steven Tyler and some of these people, and I mean, there's nobody better. So I'm like, man, maybe we can keep this up for a while,
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but guys like Sammy and Steven and, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick, they're freaks of nature. They've never aged at all. I mean, Sammy still sounds the way he did 40 years ago. It's crazy that, his voice has stayed as strong as it has, but
absolutely.
I just think that it's, some bands that have been around for 30 plus years have lost a step. And I'm not trying to bash on anybody. That's not where I'm coming from at all. But Tesla, it doesn't seem like you guys have lost anything. I mean, it was, the show that I was at in October over in Louisville, you guys came out, started with Coming At You Live, and it was as ferocious as it was in 1990. I mean, it was every bit as good.
I think the band's in the best shape it's ever been in.
I would agree.
So, that being said, and we're still pushing the envelope. You've seen my crazy drum kit I had out there. I'm having fun, man. It's like, you got 3 bass drums up there? Well, 2 of them are lit them up. I don't play them. They just got some lights in them and dig the vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be Alex Van Halen, but at the same time, I am trying to be Alex Van Halen. I was sitting here watching YouTube with this video, Drumeo, and there's this guy on there, and he breaks down the whole Hot for Teacher thing, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, this is insane. It's really, really great. And then I'm finding a 13-year-old little girl playing the video. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. She frickin' smoked my ass right now. I'm like, really? I'm like, and those people and those kids are out there, man.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be 22. They can be 13. And I don't mind humbling myself that way, but I'm learning still, and I still like to watch this stuff and see where I'm at and what I'm doing and what my interests are, man. I love drums, man.
Yeah.
And if you follow some of my posts, you're going to start to see a lot more from drumming out of me, because I never posted a lot of stuff of me, like, taking the opportunities, warm ups, this, that. This is what I do. But I'm going to put a lot of stuff together. I got my studio, in great shape. I got a couple kits set up. I got one set up. I've got percussion stuff set up. I mean, just as we sit here, I can jump right over. Well, my little dog, she's right here by my percussion setup. She's so comfortable. I'm not going to do what I was just going to do. I was going to bust out some stuff real quick. But she'll just run away. She's so comfy right now, I can't do it to her. So.
Yeah, it's all good.
But my point is, I can jump on anything at any time, anywhere in my house and play, which is great. I got a whole percussion thing set up. I've got a small kit. I've got the larger kit set up for recording. And I'm going to take advantage of these things and really start to get some stuff out there and start sharing.
That's awesome.
I don't think
man.
I've done it. I don't think I've done it over the years because I thought, well, there's so many great guys. What do I have to share? That's how I've always felt anyway. But I feel different now. It's like, no, just go have a good time. Put some stuff out there. Don't take yourself that serious, man. Just get out there. People are interested, you know.
They are. And let me just say, you know, I mean, there's a running joke on this show that just a cursory search of YouTube and you can find, you know, a 9-year-old kid that can drum circles around anybody alive. They're out there for sure. But the thing about you sharing that I think is so important is your approach to drumming has always spoken to me and countless others because it's so musical. It's not a chop fest, but it's very, how do I even describe your playing? Some of your fills are so, they sound so technical, yet they're very, very musical. You know, I mean, things that I just wouldn't have thought of.
That's huge for me. That's all I've ever wanted to do. That's the best compliment you can ever pay me because I'm not a chop guy. Do I have a few? Well, I got a couple, you know, but after a couple of those, I'm done. But what I am is a musical drummer. I want to play music, and that's been my whole goal. And if you look at somebody like Jeff Porcaro, who was one of my heroes, you know, and then you got Steve Gadd on the other side who had all the chops and all of it. And then you got Bonham. So my thing growing up was, well, I got Bonham and I got Porcaro. I'm going to go right down the middle of that road. And that's who I wanted to be. And I had the band to do it with. And in other words, I could play, but I didn't have to just bash, and I could add some dynamics, and we were a dynamic band, and we can add those subtleties into the group. So I've been able to do that. I mean, I was listening to Gino Vanelli, Brothers, one of my favorite records, you know, when the band was out in 87, you know. I mean, I was listening to Brandon Fields with Greg Bissonette, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't listening to, I missed the whole 80s thing. I really did. It's not, I mean, I was just in a different place. Listening to a lot of 70s music, Motown, Neil Diamond, you know, singer-songwriter stuff. That's what I love to do. And that's what I still love to do. And what I did with Keith Emerson and the orchestra, I mean, that was the best compliment I could have ever been paid when Teddy A. Mickelson, the conductor for the orchestra, you know, he had called me and congratulated me on the record and what we had done together. And he said, the thing I love most about your playing, Troy, is the fact that I can mute the orchestra at any time, and I always know where I'm at in the song.
Oh, man, that's a huge compliment.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, mission accomplished. That's really my goal. I never come from a chop. I'm never coming from that end of it. You know, I don't think that way. I don't play music that way. And I still want to make sure that I don't lose that. But do I work on some chops here and there? Not so much chops, but I work on practice, things that are beneficial to my playing. If I'm playing some Latin stuff or some swing jazz stuff, and it's all behind the scenes closet stuff that I like to do, because I'm not a jazz drummer and I'm not a Latin drummer, but I have, you know, I have an understanding of some of those rhythms, and, you know, I love David Garibaldi, huge, love his stuff. So the whole paradiddle thing from him and his book, you know, Future Sounds, you know, and I would just take a page or two out of those books. I didn't go through the whole book. I would take a page out. I mean, you could take one page out of, you know, stick control. You know, I don't need the whole. I just give me those first 13 hand patterns, which is things that have been game changers. Take the quarters, 8/16, and then take the triplets and the dotted quarters and the half notes and such, and have an understanding of what that is, and, you know, and be able to count and play, and, you know, but that's kind of where I come from. I have basic. I call it basic back to basics 101, you know, and that's my program, you know.
Yeah.
That's who I am, what I do. But there's enough information with all of that to be well-rounded. You know?
Well, you're certainly a well-rounded drummer. And, you know, I mean, I have said this to, I don't know how many folks. I think that in the grand scheme of things, you are one of the most criminally underrated drummers of all time, just because of the way the drumming sounds technical, but it's not technical. It's still very musical. And, you know, just one example that I'll throw out is the fill at the end of I guess the solo in Love Song. That's like a 4-bar fill that's not hard to play, but yet it's really hard to play. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, yeah, it's those are signature fills that become part of the track. You probably don't want to certain those I play it every night.
Right.
Because it's a signature feel. It happened that way. I mean, it's the Jack and Diane thing.
Yes, but it's not. If you look at the sticking pattern, it's not hard to play.
No,
but it's
Jack and
hard.
Diane. It's the same thing.
But it's hard to
Jack
play.
And Diane, think about that. How many people air drum? It's one of those moments where you air drum.
Right.
And that's what you want. That's what Phil called it when he came to record Shock with me. We did that in a few days, like 3.5, 4 days of drums. Him and I, we were doing 3 songs a day. And he said to me, he says, "Hey man, I just want to be able to air drum the record. In other words, don't get fancy. Just, and I think that's always been who I am anyway. So, but I've always had some technical ability, but it's riding that fine line, and it's like, having a double pedal. If I got perfect example on, Flight to Nowhere.
Yeah.
Great radio controversy. I remember I put the double pedal on and I go, da-ga-da-ga-doom, bah, that little intro.
Yeah.
It's a double pedal. And it's the only double pedal on the record. I played that, and as I was working on that record, I remember, because I remember putting the double pedal up after the first album, and I started messing around. The next thing I know, I'm playing all this stuff that has nothing to do with the music. And I reached down and I took it and I threw it. And I got rid of it, and I'm like, I'm done with that thing. But I had that one little intro on Flight to Nowhere. I'm like, well, I think I better keep that part because that works, and it just was clean and simple, and it was not a big deal, but it was part of the track, so I did. But, I've always had a pretty good sense of balance between, and when I was studying and working on that side of my playing and pads and reading and books and whatever I might be doing, I'd stop all of that when I went in to record and play and get back together with rehearsal. And I found out that I had to separate myself so I could be in the music and not into something else that had nothing to do with the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's just the mindset that you're taking into the studio. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at. Troy, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for doing this. One of our traditions here on the show, we always ask our guests for a good piece of advice for other musicians, other drummers. You've had a legendary career. This one is one that I've been waiting for a long, long time. Give us all a good piece of advice.
Well, I'll make a suggestion. Advice, I don't know. Some of the suggestions are, the truth of the matter is there's a place for all of us to get what we need. Not everybody is going to have a successful career like me, but, it's a lot of work. It's like playing the lottery, man, and we hit it, I've been blessed, and I don't, but I've never been one to give up, and I've always been one to dream. And I think, keep the dream alive, pursue those dreams. It can happen to any one of us, and we can achieve different things within those dreams. Like I said, there's a place for all of us. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be exactly what you thought it was, but maybe it turns out to be something better than you dreamt of, and for me, the only goal and dream that I had when I was young was to be a good drummer. That's what was my goal in life. It was like, because I've never believed I was. And then then those dreams changed. And then I went into, I want to make a record. That would be really great. But to have a career, I didn't see it all coming. It's just the byproduct of, but it started with the dream, and I just followed that dream, and, and I went after it,
Yeah. Well,
keep the dream alive,
That's great advice. And one final question, and I'm just curious, Troy Jr., your son, your daughter, Skylar, which by the way, my daughter is Skylar as well. So you've got great taste in names. Are either of the kids into music at all?
My son plays drums, Troy.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. And you could find him, Troy Jr., on Facebook, and you can follow some of the stuff he's doing. He's very talented, and he's getting into producing, and he's sending me stuff that's really, really great right now. And I'm like, wow, keep it up. And he's done some work, and we've been able to share the stage. Had him on a Tesla tour with his band 5 Against 1, doing some dates, and it was cool, he was young, I took him to Japan with me, when I was with Eric Martin when he was 15, I think. So, yeah, he plays and he's been exposed to this thing, but the good news is he's got a balance, he's got a son, I got a grandson, and, he's really a great dad, and, this is, he doesn't always cater to families, so yeah. I was gone a lot, so he's there for his son, but he's still chasing his dream, which I love. He's not giving up on it. And again, perfect example. Maybe he wanted to do what I was doing, but now it's turned into something different for him. And, it's really exciting, and he's living his dream.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. But yes, it's the answer to the question.
That's awesome. Well, listen, man, I mean this sincerely. This has just been an absolute honor for me to have you on the show. It goes without saying, anytime you want to do this, this is an open door. You're welcome on this show anytime. You've just been such a huge influence and inspiration to me for, the better part of my, 30 years of being a drummer. You were one of my earliest influences. So this has been a real treat for me. So I want to thank you again for doing this, but come back and talk to us sometime soon.
Absolutely, Jamie. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Troy. We'll talk to you real soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys and girls, that is going to wrap up episode 102 of the Drum Shuffle. As always, I want to thank you sincerely for tuning in. We just simply can't do this show week in and week out without all of you tuning in and listening to our show. The biggest thing you can do to help the Drum Shuffle is share a link with a friend. That is the number one thing you can do for us, is share a link to the show with a friend that you think might like these interviews that we provide each and every week. It'll only take a couple of seconds, but if you know a drummer, a musician, text them www.thedrumshuffle.com and say, hey, check out this podcast. It's really cool. If you're inclined to do so, we certainly appreciate it. We also ask you each and every week to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you use to listen to the Drum Shuffle. That helps us tremendously. And we've got so many great interviews coming up over the next few weeks. I promise you're not going to want to miss those. So hit that subscribe button. Again, our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. You can find more information on me over at jamieeads.com. And we do answer every single email that we get here. And that email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. And just case in point, we've had some folks email us and say, hey, have you ever thought about having X guest on the show? When we get those emails, we immediately reach out to whoever that suggestion is. And I'm happy to say that we've had 3 or 4 different guests that were recommendations from you guys. So we want to hear, who do you want to hear from? Send me an email, let me know, and I will do everything within my power to get that person on this show for a full-length interview. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of your neighbors, model human decency, get a lot of good practice in while you have this opportunity, and let's all pray for normal. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.